Hey, you guys, welcome to Heal, Survive, and Thrive. Today, we're going to talk about gaslighting, how someone makes you really question your own reality, why it happens, how it happens, dissecting it, and what to do about it. So, you know me, I'm always educational, and then I have to give you guys, the tools. Like, how do you overcome gaslighting? How do you overcome self-doubt? Because you losing your grip on reality and you doubting your own thoughts or feeling like you are too sensitive, it's honestly just a manifestation of abuse that you've been through. So we're going to dive into all of it today. Gaslighting is one of the most sneaky forms of emotional abuse. It is under the emotional abuse umbrella because the thing with gaslighting is that it's so subtle. It's not like physical abuse where you can obviously see the bruises. It's not the verbal abuse where you can feel the yelling. I mean, you can hear the yelling. Gaslighting is bruises really of the mind. By the end of this episode, I want you to understand how gaslighting works, the tactics that a person will use when they are gaslighting you, why it is so effective, and how to really begin dealing with this. Let's dive into all of it. Let's learn how to help ourselves, since gaslighting does chip away at your self-esteem and sense of self. So what exactly is gaslighting? It's psychological manipulation. It's a tactic that's used in order for an abuser to get what they want. So they do this so you can question yourself. You question your thoughts. You question your memories. You question your perceptions of reality. The term gaslighting, it comes from an old movie where really a husband dimmed the lights in the house. So in this movie, the husband dims all the lights in the house and insisted to his wife that the lights weren't dimming. Over time, she started to believe she was losing her mind. This is exactly what happens in real life. But instead of dimming the lights, they use different words or actions or these nonverbal kind of things that they do, these cues to confuse you. And this is why it's subtle, but it's very powerful. And the worst part is you don't even realize it's happening until all of a sudden you feel like you're going batshit crazy. So the thing with gaslighting that is the most dangerous is because there really aren't those obvious signs. And unless you know what gaslighting is, what manipulation is, and unless you know your own stuff, your own wounds, your own codependencies, your own not having a sense of self, like you kind of have to know all this stuff in order for you to be in a situation where you go, wait, what the hell is happening right now? And you completely start detaching from this person. Most people, since they don't know all of what I just said, they get lost in the drama and the confusion with this person. So let's walk through some of the common ways that they do this so you can start to kind of recognize it. The first thing is that they're going to say, this is probably, I think it's just one of the most obvious, is that this never happened. That never happened. You bring something up and they said, something that they did, and they flat out deny it altogether. And they're consistent with that. They believe their lie. They're just going to keep denying. So it's frustrating because you were sitting there and you're like, wait, what? Like, I know this happened. I'm not crazy. And no, you're not crazy. They're just trying to rewrite the story so the story fits their narrative. I mean, when I even say this out loud, this shit is so crazy to me. It's still to this day, having done this for like 10 years, that it's still crazy to me that this is how people operate in life. But you have to remember, unless you're dealing with like a psychopath, most people, whether it's narcissism, borderline, all those things, they're not conscious to what it is that they're doing. A psychopath or a sociopath, they're more malicious in understanding what it is that they actually are doing and the ramifications of, if I do this, this will happen. A lot of people are just very toxic that they just honestly believe their own lies, or they just deny things outright because they don't want to deal with how that makes them feel. So it's not that they're consciously trying to deny something so you can begin to question yourself. It's that maybe a lot of people just start to deny what happened because they don't want to deal with how it makes them feel. And that's a big part of dealing with an unhealthy person, but not necessarily dealing with, someone who is purposefully trying to gaslight you. Another one is you're being too sensitive. This is classic gaslighting. Anytime you're upset or you're hurt, they just dismiss your feelings as an overreaction. You start to question, okay, well, I guess I am too sensitive, or why am I so sensitive to this? Am I overreacting? Am I being too emotional? And why do I do this? And so, here's just the news flash is you really have to memorize these kind of phrases because you're not too sensitive. You're not being too emotional. You feel something, which means you're being human, and they don't want humanness. They just want what they want, and they don't care about what they're doing in order to get it. So these are all things that someone will say to kind of like throw you off a little bit. Shifting blame. This is easy. This is classic. If you call them out on something, they're going to immediately spin it around on you. You say, hey, you hurt me when you did that. And they'll follow up with, well, maybe if you didn't act this way, or you didn't act so needy, or you didn't do this, I wouldn't have done that. No, healthy adults do not do that. They completely own their reaction, regardless of what someone did. And I always say that to you guys is regardless of what someone does, what's going on inside of you is your responsibility. A toxic person, they're not going to own that. They're just going to shift blame. And so if you're talking about the verbal things that someone says, you're too sensitive, you're emotional, that didn't happen, and then blame shifting, like it's not one thing that happens. So it's not just someone saying to you, you're so sensitive, every single time you get into a discussion that makes them feel uncomfortable, or you're trying to express how you feel and what they said hurt your feelings or whatever. It's not just the you're too sensitive. It's the you're too sensitive. It's the shutting down. It's the blame shifting. It's all of these things coming together that make you go, wait a minute, I guess I am the problem. And that's exactly what they want. They want you to start questioning your reality, not just questioning, did that actually really happen, but questioning your own feelings. Maybe I shouldn't feel that way. That's questioning your feelings. So if they can say something or do something enough times where you start to go, wait, am I too sensitive, emotional? Am I asking for too much? When you question yourself, you're being gaslit. It's working, right? So when someone is shifting blame, they're just doing it because they're uncomfortable, really. They're uncomfortable. They're not getting their way. They don't know how to deal with their own actions, their own defense mechanisms that they kind of spew out. And we all have them. When you get uncomfortable, what is it that you do? When I get uncomfortable, I'm trying to think now, because back in the day, I think I would just like shut down. Whereas now I absolutely don't do that. I'd probably say if I'm really, really triggered, I might get a little defensive. And, regardless of being a coach or talking about this stuff, we're just human. This is what we do. But you have to know what you do. Like I said, years and years ago, it was that I just shut down. I didn't really get like kind of defensive, or if I did, it was a little bit of that, but it was more just kind of shutting down. Whereas now I don't really shut down. I want to have a conversation. I want to understand the situation, but I might be, if I'm really triggered, I might get a little defensive. So understanding yourself is just as important as understanding the other person, because you have to understand how you show up when you are uncomfortable, regardless of what the person does. Someone can try to manipulate you, and it's great that you know what manipulation is and you can spot it and you can say, hey, you're manipulating me, or you're, being passive aggressive, or you're giving me the silent treatment. Okay, cool. But when they do that, how do you react? Do you get uncomfortable because someone's not talking to you and they're giving you the silent treatment, and that's triggering your codependency? So then you try to force a conversation, or you can't sleep because the thought is, oh my God, what is this person thinking? And why are they mad at me? And, the list goes on and on of thoughts that we have. That is your stuff. That's what we're working on. So I'm not here to just teach you, oh, here's gaslighting. You can chat GPT that all day long. It's about what's going on inside of you. That's something that you have to have a conversation with a professional, right? With a coach, with a therapist, whoever that actually knows what they're doing. Have that conversation so you can start to have more, not just self-awareness, but the tools to do something different the next time you're in that interaction with that person. And that's what all of this is about. Gaslighting, another thing, we're talking about them saying, they'll forget to tell you like certain things. They'll forget to tell you certain things, and then they'll tell you later on that they actually did tell you those things. And when you confront them, they'll act like it's no big deal. Well, it's no big deal. And, I just forgot and whatever. It's just that sneaky way of making you feel like you're always out of the loop, that you don't really know all the details. It's a way to kind of keep you dumbed down a little bit. They'll slowly chip away at your friends, your family, your support system by convincing you that your friends and family are either bad influences, or they're jealous, or they're just not good relationships for you, or they're just bad people in general. Or you'll become so codependent on them that you really won't have a support system other than that person. And that makes you even more susceptible to abuse, because your everything is surrounded by this person. Now, even in a healthy relationship, it's great to have your rock, your ride or die, your best friend, but you also have to be able to have other relationships in your life. You have to have other relationships in your life, not just this person, because you become more vulnerable to, and we're not living life based on, oh God, what if one day they just left me, or one day they just passed away? But the truth is that you need more than one personality, view on life. You guys know talking to your girlfriends is different than talking to your man. So you need that variety in your life for a multitude of reasons. We only ever fall for manipulation. And this is a big one, is, why do we fall for it? So why do we let them get away with it, so to speak? And I'm kind of putting that in quotations, because you're letting them get away with it, obviously, when you buy into it. So the truth is, it's not as simple as being gullible. There's a deeper root cause, and it's a lot. It goes back, it goes back to your childhood. It goes back to how you were programmed, all of those things. If you grew up in a household where you were constantly questioned or made to feel wrong for your feelings, you were invalidated as a child. A little example I always give is when you fell and scraped your knee, if the first thing out of the adult's mouth was "you're okay," well, that's invalidating your feelings and that your feelings are wrong. And it sounds ridiculous as an adult, but that's because you have logic now. But as a child, you don't have logic. So when someone tells you that you're okay, but innately your feeling is that you feel hurt or sad, you are made to feel like your feelings are wrong. So the more that continues to happen throughout the course of your childhood, you begin to have more of a detachment from yourself. You're more likely to tolerate gaslighting as an adult, because you need someone to tell you how you feel, because when you do feel something, you don't know how to validate that feeling, because when you needed it validated as a child, you didn't get it validated. Someone told you the complete opposite, that you shouldn't feel that way, or that you just straight up don't feel that way. So another example is if a parent always said, "Stop being dramatic," or "That's not what happened." Again, it may not be a parent that's trying to gaslight you and screw you up. You're just being conditioned unknowingly, and probably unknowingly by the parent as well. Maybe they have your best interest at heart, but you're being conditioned to doubt your own perception. And narcissists, they just prey on that. That's it. You become, as a child, you grow up to become codependent. A narcissist, a toxic person, can smell that a mile away, because that's exactly what they're looking for. They're looking for toxic givers or an unhealthy giver, because they're a toxic taker. So they're masters at finding people that have those emotional wounds. And look, everyone has a wound, but it's all about the vulnerabilities to that wound. Okay? Do you own that wound? Do you have standards? Are you able to communicate? Do you talk about your boundaries? Are you not afraid of confrontation? And we just talked about that last week, where we were talking about boundaries and how to be able to communicate with people. If you're that type of person, it doesn't matter how many wounds you have or what it is that you've been through. If you're that person, no. Any kind of person who's toxic, narcissist, whatever, they're not going to be attracted to you at all. They might try to see, ooh, look, let me see if I can break down this really confident, healthy person. But it's not going to work, and it's not worth their time and effort to try to break you down when they can just find someone else and just do it very, very easily. And that's also why, side note, I always say, if you have been discarded, it is the best compliment in the world, because you are not a person that was able to be taken advantage of. It doesn't matter what happened in your relationship. At the end of the day, energetically, they know that you're stronger than even you think you are. And that's why they kind of tossed you aside. Many of us grow up as the good girls, the peacemakers, the givers. And when you hear those things enough, that you are that type of person, you have these people-pleasing tendencies, and that's why you have been labeled as this person. So if you're used to prioritizing other people's feelings over your own, why did that happen? Because you grew up in environments where you needed to do that for self-protection. It's easy if that's how, either you were raised or environments that you were in and how you've continuously lived your life even as an adult. And the only reason why you continuously did that is because you were unaware of what it was that you were actually doing. It's never, I don't want to say it's never been a problem, but it hasn't really ever been too much of a problem up until now. You've always been known as, the good girl, the peacemaker, the giver, the helper, all those things. And you've kind of loved being that person in a way. And it's great to be all of those things. There just has to be boundaries with it. We can't be giving and giving and not ever pouring into ourselves. And when we're talking about people-pleasing tendencies, well, that is a unhealthy giver, and that is a person that does not pour into themselves, because you shouldn't be people-pleasing at all. You should be filling your cup, and whatever, comes out of the cup is for everyone else. So if you're used to prioritizing everyone else, then it's easy to fall for gaslighting. It's easy to let someone else tell you realities or their own realities, and you believe them as your own. So you're focused on making them happy. And this has been the pattern in your life up till this point, that you're willing to even doubt your own self to kind of keep the peace. Or maybe you're not in. And I don't think any of this stuff is stuff that people are doing consciously. It's just how you were programmed. If you really have a shitty story of yourself, let's just call it what it is. If you don't believe that you're worthy of respect, you're more likely to tolerate people treating you poorly. And I don't think this is, most people aren't walking around saying, I just think of myself poorly and I have a low self-worth. And no, but it's in the behaviors that you tolerate. And that's why last week's episode, when we talked about boundaries, is so important, because your boundaries equate your standards and how you demand to be treated in life, treated by yourself, boundaries with yourself, and boundaries with other people. And so working on boundaries and all those different layers that we talked about, it's going to build up your self-worth and your self-esteem. It just is. And your self-esteem is really the shield that protects you from this type of abuse. But when it's low and your boundaries are weak, then you're susceptible to a lot of forms of abuse. By the time you realize that you're being gaslit, it's hard to leave, and why is that? Because your mind has been manipulated for so long that you're just unsure of what's real, what's not. You really do need this person in a lot of ways as almost like air. You've been handed over control of your mind. You have given someone else control over your mind in that way. So they've convinced you that you're the problem and that you're not strong enough to leave and that you can't do this on your own and that no one else will want you or your life will suck if they're not here. And you really believe that. I can't tell you how many times I've been on the phone with people. They're like, I don't know if I can live without this person. I don't know if I can do this. You absolutely can. You just have doubt in your ability because you have had a false sense of security for a really long time. That's mental prison right there, because that means, and unfortunately that's the prison that they built, but you just walked right in unknowingly. But guess what? Now you're learning. And that's why it's hard to escape sometimes. It's because most people don't even realize what's happening. They don't realize that this person has created this prison, and they don't realize that they have voluntarily just walked right on in. So now you got to leave, and leaving can be hard. I totally get that. But I'm going to tell you, this is how you're going to get your power back. The good news is you can take control at any point in time. And here's how you're going to do it. First, you're going to start trusting your gut again, because your intuition is your gift. You have two amazing gifts. We all do. One is called free will, and one is called your intuition. If something feels off, it is, period. You have to practice, and this is a practice, not second guessing that. Stop second guessing yourself. Your gut is trying to protect you. Listen, it's there to protect you. It knows how to do its job. And eventually you'll learn the difference between fear and intuition, because that's a biggie that can really screw people up a lot. Now, next you're going to do is you're going to start documenting things that happen. You're going to write down what's being said and done. You're going to keep a little reality journal where you start to document these really key moments. And when you're feeling confused, you're going to go back and read it. And sometimes this is even good when you're going through a breakup, where you write down all the things that this person did that hurt you. Because I remember going through my divorce, and I remember a family friend saying, Steph, write everything down. Write everything down so you don't forget what exactly he did and what he actually put you through. And I think it is important because it's easy just to be a good person and think everyone is trying to play nice in the sandbox. But when you're dealing with this level of toxicity, there's a motive behind everything that they do. And it's hard to walk on eggshells or be on guard every single time you deal with this person. And you're not going to always be on guard because that's just not a healthy way to live your life. But it is very, very important that you always remember what your reality is and how you felt, and listening to that intuition and making sure that you get it down on paper. I want you to also find people that you trust that will remind you that you're not batshit crazy, that you're actually perfectly sane. I remember going through my separation and me talking to a friend that I had had for many, many years, way longer than I was in my relationship with my ex-husband, and sitting down having a conversation with her. And I said, he thinks this about me. He thinks I'm this, he thinks I'm that, or whatever. And she looked at me. Now, mind you, she's known me for like, at that point, 15 years maybe, or something like that, 20 years. And she looked at me and she's like, that's not you. So I think we sometimes need to hear it from people that we really trust. Maybe it is a therapist, maybe it is a coach, maybe it's just a friend that you really, really trust, but having someone to remind you of who you are and also validate your experience is really critical. But here's the thing, this is what they try to do. They try to get you away from those people. And it was funny because the one person, that one friend that said that to me, was also the one friend that my ex-husband didn't like. Now, why is that? Because he knew that she was a strong force in my life and would help me if he tried to give me any kind of shit. So it's just funny how the isolation is a real thing when it comes to these relationships, because they don't want you to have that support system. They want you to solely feel like you need just this one person in order to live. Now, boundaries. You don't have to engage with them when these conversations are happening and they're trying to confuse you. So if they're twisting your words or gaslighting you, you can just walk away. I mean, if you don't want to like do the silent treatment thing and don't play the game, you can very well tell a person what it is that you're doing. I'm walking away because now you're starting to, or I'm walking away because you think your reality is this and I think mine is this, and I'm not engaging in these games. That's it. Point blank. We don't need to do anything else. Healing from gaslighting is not something you have to do alone. And it's very hard to do alone. You absolutely need the therapy, the coaching, the online courses, all of those things, so they can teach you how to rebuild your mind after abuse. And you have to be consistent with it. Like anything that you're healing, you can't just leave it alone and not clean the wound or put a Band-Aid on it or put some ointment. You can't do any of that. You actually have to take the time to nurture that wound. Before we continue on with this week's episode, if you've ever been caught in the cycle of a narcissistic relationship, you know how confusing and exhausting it can be. It's not just the relationship itself, it's the emotional toll that stays with you after it's over. That's why I'm inviting you to join my narcissism workshop. The links are actually in my bio. It's a step-by-step kind of mini workshop for you guys to help you understand the layers of emotional abuse and narcissistic abuse, and to really help you break free from their grip and rebuild your strength again, because I'm sure by now you're absolutely exhausted from dealing with this person and you don't even know who you are at times. You'll learn how to protect your peace, set firm boundaries, and finally take back control of your mental well-being, which is so incredibly important when you're coming out of these relationships. If you've been waiting for that clarity, that confidence, and a way to really move forward, this is it. So do not waste any time. I will also help you by giving you free access to my membership. This is where you can kind of talk with each other and also talk with me on any questions or concerns or things that you're actually going to. So head down below, click those links, start the narcissism workshop, and let's get back to this week's episode. I know this is a really heavy subject for a lot of people. I know that it's hard to just walk away from this episode and feel totally confident in your abilities to actually do this. Gaslighting is, obviously, it's not your fault. It's this person who has learned different tactics in order to get what they want, because they are controlling, they're selfish, and they need to get these things in order to actually cope in the world, right? So you and I can kind of, as much as there are times where you might feel unhealthy or that you've got some issues or whatever, you still know how to do this. So when you say, okay, these are my issues and I'm learning what I need to do in order to kind of like heal some stuff and reprogram myself and be a healthy person and, attract this in my life and manifest this, whatever, you're self-reflecting and you're owning your stuff. Toxic people can't do that. They just point fingers and then they cause chaos, and that's how they kind of operate in the world, and that's how they'll operate in the world for the rest of their life. So that's not your problem. It's a tactic that's used by a person to maintain control, and we all know that, but you don't have to stay under the spell, and you definitely don't have to get affected by it where it controls your inner self. And when you're coming out of these relationships, it takes time to rebuild your sense of self again. And that's what all of this is actually about. So if this episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend who you think also might need to hear it, has been through some stuff herself or himself. Remember, awareness is really the first step. You have to be self-aware. You have to know this stuff inside and out, and you have to be aware of your own self. If you're ready to start reclaiming your mind and rebuilding yourself again, I'm always here to support you guys. You guys know that. Like, if you're interested in coaching, I always put the links down below. Please, by all means, send me a message, register, start this, because again, it's not something that you can really do on your own. It takes a lot of time, and it's beneficial to have a conversation with anyone, whether it's me or a therapist or anyone that knows their shit and can kind of help you through navigating, these aspects of self-doubt that you have, because you're really rebuilding yourself in a lot of ways, just like a personal trainer, just all these different professions that kind of help you, dietitian, whatever the goal is. You need that person in your corner to really, first off, help you, to tell you exactly what to do in order to get there. I think that's really important. Most therapists, unless you're dealing with a really, really good one, they're not going to lay out the blueprint of how to move forward and be able to hold your hand while you're doing it. And that's what I've always wanted to be for you guys, for everyone, is this is the hand holding that we all need at times. And it's not just about, oh, you've gone through this and you need hand holding. No, you're human. You're human, and you're going through this experience and you're trying to change and you're trying to heal. And that shit just takes time and work and effort and consistency. And that's what the courses are for and the coaching is there for and all of those things. The beauty of it, much like anything else that you've ever done that has been really, really important to you, is once you learn it, you don't ever forget it. And then you just reapply it to different aspects of your life. And that's why I love what I do for a living and what I get to help people with. So I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode, and I'll see you next week.